Hey guys, tonight we slip into the soft flicker of candlelight in a Florentine boudoir. Walls hung with faded tapestries, the scent of old rosewater lingering in the air, and a smoky polished mirror propped unevenly on a carved wooden table. You're standing there now, bathed in the dim glow of the room, staring at your reflection. And you know what? According to Renaissance beauty standards, you might already be in trouble. You were never meant to hear this story, but somehow, you're here. Your forehead's too short. Your skin, not pale enough. Your eyes aren't the ideal shade of melancholic blue, and your eyebrows, well, you're not even supposed to have those. Welcome to the Renaissance, where the ideal woman was crafted more like a marble statue than a living person. And if you want to survive in this society, blending in isn't enough. You have to excel, or fade into obscurity. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, let me know in the comments, where in the world are you listening from, and what time is it there? Midnight in Manila? 4 a.m. in Florence? I love hearing that stuff. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You tilt your head, the glass slightly distorting your features. Renaissance mirrors were made with blown glass and tin amalgam. Beautiful, but warped. Still, it's the only reflection you've got. You run your fingers over your forehead, remembering the advice you overheard from the apothecary's wife. A beautiful woman should have a forehead the size of 4 fingers. And no, not your 4 fingers. That would be cheating. Use the average male nobleman's hand, because of course that's the benchmark. Beauty in this world isn't just vanity. It's reputation, family honor, marriage prospects. A noble woman's looks could be detailed in diplomatic letters, debated in courtly poetry, even weighed in dowry negotiations. You are your face. You are your skin. You are your hair. And God help you if you're aging. The obsession isn't limited to women. Men participate too. But women's bodies are policed and sculpted with a degree of scrutiny that even TikTok's For You page would find excessive. And the stakes? Let's just say, no amount of inner beauty is going to save you from the gossip in a Florentine piazza. Your maid, barely older than you, laces up your stiff bodice. You wince. Not from the pressure, though yes, it's tight, but from the reminder that you've already lost 2 potential suitors this year. One claimed your jawline was too strong. The other was put off by a sun freckle. Outside, you hear church bells tolling the hour. Time to finish getting ready. There's a portrait session this afternoon, and your mother insists that you must look more like a Botticelli muse than yourself. Historians still argue whether these beauty ideals were genuinely embraced by women or simply enforced by social and economic pressures. After all, many of the guides for beauty came from men, poets, physicians, painters, projecting their desires onto the female body with startling confidence and questionable taste. You reach for the small jar of white powder on your table. We'll get into that more in the next section, but let's just say it's not baby safe. You pat a bit onto your cheeks. It smells faintly of vinegar and something vaguely metallic. Not a good sign. There's a manuscript tucked into your dressing chest, passed down from your cousin in Venice. It's full of beauty advice. How to pluck hair, concoct face masks from egg whites and powdered bone, and dye your lips with crushed cochineal beetles. You tried the beetle thing once. Your lips looked great. Your tongue? still red 3 days later. Outside your window, Renaissance Florence bustles, vendors shouting about figs, children chasing each other through narrow alleys, the sound of a lute floating up from the courtyard below. But in here, the world is quiet, controlled. You are part of a performance, a painting in motion. And yet, despite the discomfort, despite the rules, you catch your reflection once more in the mirror, and something flickers. Not beauty, perhaps, but defiance. A knowing glance that says, "I see you, world. And I'm still here." Oh, and by the way, that mirror, the smoky effect isn't just age. The amalgam in Renaissance mirrors could include mercury, which means, yes, your mirror might literally be slowly poisoning you. Fabulous. You sit at the edge of your carved walnut stool, still in front of the mirror, and dab a bit more of that chalky white paste onto your cheeks. It smells acrid, sharp, and just a bit like vinegar-soaked silverware. You tilt your head. That's the scent of status. Welcome to the Renaissance obsession with whiteness. And no, not the modern kind. We're talking about skin. The paler, the better. The ultimate sign of wealth was skin so luminous, so ghostly, that people assumed you hadn't been in the sun since birth. You don't tan in this world. You wither like a noble orchid when exposed to anything as vulgar as sunlight. You lean closer to the mirror. Your skin isn't pale enough. You've been walking outside too much again, even with the parasol. The faint flush of blood beneath your cheeks threatens to reveal something scandalous, that you're alive. So, you reach for the whitening paste. It's called ceruse, and it's made from white lead, actual lead. It goes on thick, like icing. And sure, you've read the warnings scratched in the margins of your aunt's herbalist guide. Lead causes hair loss, tooth rot, skin ulcers. But also, it gives you a porcelain glow, like a marble statue. People say you look like a goddess. That counts for something. You smear it across your temples, down your jawline, and across your nose. Smooth it with a rag dipped in rose water. Now your skin reflects the candlelight, like a fine sculpture in a Medici garden. You'll probably pay for this in 30 years, assuming you live that long. But tonight, you'll look divine. And it's not just ceruse. You've also experimented with mixtures of egg whites, crushed pearl, and even snail slime. Yes, snail slime. It's supposed to tighten the skin. Your cousin swears by it, though her face always smells faintly like the herb garden after rain. For blush, you dab on a bit of cochineal, the red beetle dye again. It's expensive, imported from the New World. Your mother keeps it hidden in a drawer next to the family's letters and the key to the olive oil press. She lets you use just a pinch. The red brings life to your otherwise ghostly face, like the faint color in a porcelain doll's cheeks. Historians still argue whether women truly bought into these beauty rituals themselves, or if they were simply adapting for survival. After all, beauty in this world is as much a weapon as a decoration. Pale skin says you're rich enough not to work, that you stay indoors, embroidering cushions or writing melancholy sonnets, that you are untouched by vulgar labor. Outside, peasant girls run barefoot through the market, cheeks flushed, forearms browned by the sun. They'll never be considered beautiful in the eyes of the court, no matter how striking they are. Their beauty is practical. Yours must be decorative. You shift on your stool. The paste is beginning to harden. Ceruse forms a crust if left too long. Cracks around the corners of your mouth if you laugh. You can't smile too wide, but that's all right. Laughter's for taverns. You're a portrait in motion now. And remember that glowing complexion you see on noble women in paintings? Half of it is illusion. The artist flatters the subject. The lighting in the studio is kind. And underneath the lead paint on canvas is a woman wearing lead paint on her face. You once saw a lady faint during Mass. She collapsed like a puppet whose strings had snapped. Later, someone whispered that she'd mixed her ceruse too strong. The lead had seeped into her bloodstream. She recovered, they said, but never quite remembered her prayers the same way again. Still, the aesthetic was worth it, apparently. You finish with a dusting of rice powder to set everything in place. The powder helps reduce shine and locks in the whiteness. It also makes your skin feel like parchment. Dry, tight, fragile. You blink. Your eyes water just a little, but you're almost done. Next to you on the table is a small bottle labeled Aqua Vitae. It's a kind of distilled vinegar wine blend. Some women use it as toner. Others use it to gently bleach their freckles. You've tried it once. It stung like betrayal. But that's the price of beauty. You lift the mirror again. Your face is flawless now. Smooth. Pale. Still. You look nothing like yourself. But perhaps that's the point. And then comes the final step. A light touch of lavender oil along your jaw to mask the chemical scent. You breathe it in. It smells like funerals and weddings, like memory, like artifice and truth, all tangled together. This isn't just a face you've painted, it's armor. And outside, in the courts and salons and dinner parties, no one will dare ask what's beneath. You wince as your maid plucks another hair from your hairline, the little curved shell she's using clicking softly against your skin. One by one, the fine hairs go, until your forehead begins to creep higher and higher, an inch taller than it was last week, maybe 2 by next. You're chasing the elusive beauty ideal of the Renaissance, the towering forehead. Yes, really. You stare at your reflection through teary eyes, rubbing the spot just above your eyebrows. It stings. You're not crying. You swear. But the pain has a way of crawling backward into your skull. Still, you grit your teeth and nod for her to continue. In this world, a high, rounded forehead isn't just attractive. It's a symbol of intelligence, nobility, and refinement. Women are supposed to look like classical statues, like Roman goddesses with serene expressions and brains the size of a watermelon. Or so the painters would have you believe. And if your natural hairline disagrees, out come the tweezers, or in your case, the tiny sharpened seashell, imported from Sicily and shaped like a crescent moon. It's delicate, beautiful, and completely useless at gripping anything. But it was a wedding gift from your aunt, so here you are, pretending it works. Historians still argue whether this forehead fetish was widespread or mostly confined to elite circles in cities like Florence and Venice. But judging by how many portraits show women with baby-smooth brows and vast foreheads, it's clear that someone, somewhere, really committed to the look. You remember the story your cousin told you. A noble woman in Milan had a hairline so high they joked you could host a chess match on it. She was considered ravishing, until, of course, she accidentally plucked too far and had to wear a fringe of dyed sheep wool for the next 2 seasons. That brings you to the next item on the vanity, a little mesh cap called a balzo. Think of it like a Renaissance headband, but stuffed, structured, and styled to make your forehead look even bigger. Some are decorated with pearls, others with delicate lace or tiny gold wire. Yours is a simple blue velvet, padded with raw cotton and a few herbs to keep lice at bay. Stylish and defensive. But if plucking hair isn't your style, don't worry. There's another option. Just shave your hairline altogether, with a dull blade, while staring into a warped mirror. What could go wrong? You've tried it once. The results? Patchy. Your mother told you to wear a veil for a week and pretend it was for modesty. Meanwhile, your little brother started calling you Sister Moonface. He still does. For those who truly go bald, whether by accident or ambition, there are wigs. Yes, Renaissance wigs. But don't imagine the powdered kind of the 18th century. These are made from human hair, animal hair, even silk threads. And they're not always convincing. One woman you met at a banquet had a wig made from goat wool. You could tell by the way it curled in the humidity. And yet, people envy her. Because that hair, regardless of source, gives her the illusion of the perfect dome of thought. A forehead so vast it could hold the works of Plato and a fresco. Funny thing, all of this forehead drama started from ancient Roman ideals of beauty that got recycled through medieval texts. The Renaissance loves its throwbacks. They read ancient descriptions of feminine perfection and thought, yes, this must be the gold standard. They didn't question whether those ideals were even real in the first place. You step away from the mirror, your face tight from the lead paste, your brow reddened from the plucking, and your thoughts buzzing with equal parts shame and pride. You look ridiculous, but you also look correct. Your little sister pokes her head into the room and offers a grape. You decline. Can't risk staining your lips. She eyes your forehead, clearly holding back a laugh. You consider telling her about the goat hair wig lady. Maybe later. And here's a fringe tidbit you heard once from a traveling French painter. In some rural corners of Brittany, women intentionally shape their heads as infants, binding them with cloth to produce elongated skulls considered noble-looking. Cranial fashion. Extreme, but honestly, not that far off from what you're doing right now. You press the balzo into place. The weight is comforting in a way, like a little crown of shared suffering. Outside, the bell tower chimes again. You count 4 chimes. Still enough time to take a breath before heading to the courtyard, where other women will pretend not to judge your appearance while mentally comparing their foreheads to yours. You breathe deeply. Remember that snail slime glow you worked for this morning. Remember your mother's smile when she said you finally looked like someone with breeding. You are, officially, ready. Your stomach growls, softly, discreetly, but enough to remind you of the small bowl of rose petal broth you had this morning. That was breakfast, and probably lunch too. It's not that there isn't food in the house. The pantry is full, in fact. But hunger is fashionable now. You press a hand lightly against your corseted waist and try not to breathe too deeply. In Renaissance society, thinness isn't just admired. It's practically a moral virtue. To be slender is to be pure, restrained, elegant. You've heard friars preach that gluttony is a sin, that fatness reflects inner corruption. Who knew your thighs could be theological? But it goes deeper. Thinness is also an economic signal. A pale, lean frame tells the world you don't do physical labor. You aren't working the vineyards or hauling firewood. You have servants for that. Your delicacy is proof of your station. So you sip broth. You nibble at candied orange peel. You decline the warm, crusty bread the maid brings to your room, though you ache for it. Your mother once told you a horror story about a Visconti bride who gained weight between her engagement and the wedding. Her future husband sent her home with a fruit basket and a note that simply read, "Ripen less." Brutal. And yet, you remember it every time you look at cheese. Historians still argue whether these ideals were genuinely health-related or just another way to control women's appearances. Likely both. There's even a whole body of literature, poems, treatises, anatomy studies that describe the perfect female form as long, narrow, and graceful. Curves? Only acceptable in moderation, and only if they fall within certain artistic ratios. And yet, look at the paintings. Rubens adored fuller figures. So did Titian in his later years. There's an ongoing debate in art circles. Were these images celebrating real beauty ideals, or were they indulging in forbidden fantasies the artists couldn't speak about out loud? You tighten your bodice another notch and catch a whiff of lavender and starch. The fabric creaks as your ribs push gently against it. You've gotten used to the ache. It feels like achievement. This morning, your cousin slipped you a diet aid, a little cloth pouch filled with dried herbs. "Chew on it when you're hungry," she whispered. "It tastes like parsley, sage, and disappointment." But you did feel less hungry afterward, mostly because you couldn't get the taste out of your mouth. The ideal woman, they say, should look like she's composed of bone and music. Her body should be lithe, her limbs delicate, her appetite invisible. A woman who chews loudly is practically a scandal. A woman who asks for seconds, unthinkable. And for men, the pressure isn't entirely absent either. Thinness in men equals discipline, especially among poets and philosophers. You overheard a tutor once say that the mind functions better when the stomach is half empty. That man had breath like a wet bookshelf, but still, you remember his words. And yet, behind the scenes, you know plenty of noble women who secretly sneak sugar almonds behind curtains or nibble slices of prosciutto during music recitals. There's a game to it. Eat just enough to survive, but not enough to be noticed. One fringe fact that always makes you chuckle. In certain courts, especially in Milan, there were whisperings of fashion fasting contests, where women would see how long they could go, consuming only candied rose petals and diluted wine. One girl fainted dramatically in a fountain. They say she woke up to a marriage proposal. You wonder if he would have still proposed if he'd seen her chew. Tonight, there's a banquet. You'll be expected to take small portions, smile politely, and compliment the host's plum sauce. You've practiced your line already. "This tastes as refined as a madrigal." You're not even sure what that means, but it sounds smart. You lie back on your bed, corset still cinched, and close your eyes. Hunger gnaws quietly, but so does pride. You are strong. You are disciplined. You are almost entirely hollow. And hollow, in this world, is high praise. You sit perfectly still as your maid leans in with a sharpened blade, the candlelight glinting off the tiny silver handle. With a practiced hand, she scrapes your eyebrows away, delicately, slowly, as if harvesting something precious. You flinch, not from pain, but from the absurdity of it all. In Renaissance beauty, eyebrows are considered offensive. An unruly brow is the mark of the wild, the untrained, the undesirable. And so, away they go. You're used to this now. Every few days, the blade returns. Then comes the strange feeling of bare skin above your eyes, like a freshly swept floor. It's oddly vulnerable, like your face is unfinished. But that's the point. You're a blank canvas, ready for adornment. Historians still argue whether the no-eyebrow trend was purely aesthetic or tied to deeper cultural ideals about submission and modesty. Whatever the reason, the results speak for themselves. Look at portraits of noble women from Florence or Venice. Their foreheads stretch uninterrupted from brow to hairline, smooth and unbroken like ivory masks. You dab your upper eyelid with rose water to soothe the rawness, then reach for the next step in your transformation. Mouse skin brows. Yes, actual mouse skin. You unwrap a small velvet pouch and remove 2 tiny arched strips of fine fur. They're pale brown, cut carefully from the flanks of field mice. Your maid dyed them with crushed walnut hulls and glued them to fine parchment. Now, with a dab of fig sap, you stick them just above where your eyebrows used to be. They tingle slightly. One edge curls up a little. You pat it down with a sigh. Fringe beauty tip. If mouse fur isn't available, some women use slivers of velvet or even thin slices of dark bread crust. But those tend to flake off mid-conversation. You once saw a lady's eyebrow fall onto her soup spoon. She laughed it off. Barely. You adjust your veil slightly. The veil helps. It casts a soft shadow over your brow and draws attention to your cheeks instead. Cheeks are allowed to be visible. Cheeks are romantic. Meanwhile, men in this world, eyebrows are fine, even celebrated. They're allowed to have noble brows, arched, dark, expressive. You once overheard a group of courtiers describing a duke's gaze as falcon-like. No one said that about Lady Katerina's gaze, even though she probably could shoot lasers when irritated. You step back from the mirror, still unsure if your new brows look intentional or just rodent-based. Either way, they're symmetrical. That's what matters. You apply a bit of egg white to your eyelids for sheen. Not too much. You don't want to look sweaty, just mildly dewy, like a recently wept-over statue. A little rouge at the temples, a brush of lead powder across your nose, and your look is nearly complete. And here's a little-known quirk. In some Germanic courts, beauty manuals advised women to lightly singe their eyelashes to make their eyes appear wider and more innocent. You tried it once, holding a taper near your face. The smell haunted you for days. Never again. Still, it makes you wonder, how much of Renaissance beauty is about visibility, and how much is about invisibility? You're sculpting absence. No brows, no blemishes, no wrinkles, no hair. A smooth surface onto which society can project desire. You hear your name called from the hallway. The family is waiting. Time to descend the stairs with your new, mouse-enhanced gaze. You glide past a portrait of your grandmother in her youth, painted with the same bare forehead and silent expression you wear now. You wonder if she, too, lost half her eyebrows to a shaky hand or a twitchy mouse. Outside, the world buzzes with laughter and lutes. But here, behind brocade curtains and flickering sconces, you are a vision, a curated fantasy, a creature carefully constructed from scraps of fur, pigment, and pain tolerance. And as you pass a mirror on your way down, you pause. The eyebrows are holding. Good. Tonight, you are flawless. You follow the scent before you even know what it is. The air is thick with something sweet and strange, like crushed violets steeped in honey, but with a sharp undertone you can't quite place. You're in a corridor of the ducal palace, surrounded by silk tapestries and too many candles, and someone just walked past wearing half the fragrance recipes of the Renaissance. Perfume isn't just a nicety here. It's a weapon, a currency, a kind of invisible armor. People bathe maybe once a week, if that, but they perfume daily, sometimes hourly. To be unperfumed is to be suspicious. Are you poor? Are you ill? Are you French? You carry your own scent sachet tucked into your bodice, a mix of dried rose petals, crushed cloves, and a bit of orris root tied up in a lace-edged pouch. It's subtle, elegant, carefully selected by your mother to suggest refined and modest, as opposed to trying too hard to smell like royalty. But others are not so restrained. You enter the banquet hall, and it hits you in full force. Musk, ambergris, civet, and something sharply lemony. Cologne before cologne existed. Nobles dab scent behind their ears, at the wrists, even in their hair. One countess supposedly perfumes her gloves every morning with a distilled tincture made from lilies and deer gland extract. Her handshake leaves a trail of botanical mystery for hours. You once sat beside her at dinner. The scent stuck to your sleeves for 3 days. And let's not even get started on musk. Musk, in the Renaissance, is harvested from the gland of a male musk deer, dried, and powdered into a base for countless perfumes. Expensive, exotic, slightly gamey, but absolutely coveted. If your fiancé can afford a musk-scented handkerchief, he's probably landed a decent dowry. You reach for the small vial in your purse, a gift from a visiting ambassador. It contains ambergris, a waxy substance excreted by sperm whales and aged by the ocean. Yes, whale vomit. But expensive whale vomit. It's used as a perfume fixative, helping floral and spice notes cling to the skin longer. Today, you'll dab just a drop on your neckline. Tonight, you'll probably smell like eternity. Historians still debate whether people genuinely preferred these overpowering scents or simply tolerated them because they masked other, more aggressive odors. Sweat, unwashed linen, poorly drained chamber pots. But whatever the motivation, the perfume game is serious. One fringe story you overheard from a merchant in Genoa. A certain lady-in-waiting to the Queen of Naples was said to perfume the soles of her shoes so that even the echo of her footsteps smelled divine. Another woman once lined the hems of her gowns with scented wax so that she'd leave a fragrant trail when she walked. A walking incense stick with political aspirations. You glide toward the dinner table, catching competing scents in every direction. Sandalwood, violet, frankincense. Someone nearby smells strongly of cinnamon, aggressively so. You smile politely, trying not to sneeze. But fragrance isn't only about smell. It's also about reputation. Certain combinations suggest certain virtues. Rose and lemon, modesty, musk and amber, sensuality, myrrh and clove, mysterious widow energy. You once made the mistake of wearing a violet-heavy oil to a summer wedding and were told you smelled a bit too literary. You took it as a compliment. Your aunt didn't. Men, too, dab perfume with strategic flair. Poets favor lavender and sage. Soldiers prefer resinous, smoky blends that make them smell like they've just returned from conquering Constantinople. Merchants lean into citrus, suggesting cleanliness and prosperity. Your brother favors a disgusting mix of vinegar and mint that he swears keeps away the flies. It also keeps away everyone else. Still, scent is power. It drapes you like a gown, unseen but deeply remembered. People forget names, but they rarely forget smells. You press your hand to your chest, feel the warmth of the perfume pouch beneath your bodice, and smile faintly. You don't have the most jewels or the finest shoes, but tonight you smell like a Renaissance poem, complex, dramatic, and just slightly too long. And really, that's the goal. You try not to grimace as you laugh at the courtier's joke, something about a bishop and a baker's wife, because laughing too hard might show your teeth. And your teeth? They are not quite up to standard. Not yet, anyway. In the Renaissance, a beautiful smile isn't about whiteness. It's about discretion. Teeth should be small, neat, and, ideally, not seen at all. Open-mouthed laughter is considered vulgar. Excessive grinning, undignified. And if your teeth happen to be crooked, stained, or missing altogether, best to develop a mysterious half-smile and carry a fan. Always. You gently raise your fan now, pretending to waft the warm air. In truth, you're hiding a molar that's been bothering you since last winter. There's no dentist here, not really. Barber surgeons pull teeth, but only when things go truly catastrophic. In the meantime, there are powders and clove oil, and of course, cosmetics for the mouth. One of your more fashion-forward friends uses soot mixed with vinegar to blacken her teeth. It sounds counterintuitive, but apparently it's all the rage in certain Venetian circles. The dark teeth are said to make the lips look redder, the skin paler. Others use crushed herbs to stain their teeth a soft brown, less alarming than black, but still fashionable. Historians still argue whether these staining trends were widespread or limited to elite circles obsessed with Japanese and Moorish aesthetics. Some scholars suggest they were a way of disguising decay. Others think it was just another eccentric trend, like those weird dog-shaped shoes from Padua. You chew softly on a clove. It numbs your gums and freshens your breath, or at least that's what you tell yourself. The flavor is sharp, almost medicinal, but it masks the faint tang of old lead powder and whatever cheese was served earlier. At least it's not worse. You've heard horror stories about Renaissance breath. A noblewoman once reportedly fainted after standing too close to a courtier who hadn't washed his mouth since Epiphany. Of course, toothbrushing isn't quite a thing yet. Not in the modern sense. People use toothpicks, often made of silver or gold if they're wealthy, and rinse their mouths with wine or herbal infusions. Your aunt once showed you how to rub your teeth with burnt rosemary and salt. You tried it. Your gums bled for 2 days. And yet, beauty persists. You adjust your lips into the practiced smile of the Renaissance. Lips closed, eyes softly amused, the barest hint of expression. It's a little like being a statue that's just heard a clever pun. You've practiced this look in the mirror. It's more tiring than it sounds. Meanwhile, painters idealize mouths beyond recognition. In portraits, women's lips are often painted full and delicate, slightly pursed as if whispering a secret or preparing to sip from a goblet. The teeth? Rarely shown. Because real teeth ruin the fantasy. Art teeth are hypothetical. Yours, unfortunately, are real. You remember the fringe fact a merchant told you once. In some parts of Eastern Europe, noble women chewed on pieces of honeycomb soaked in sage to whiten their teeth and sweeten their breath. Another swore by rubbing teeth with crushed pearls, a luxury so absurd you laughed, quietly, with your mouth closed. At the far end of the hall, a young man flashes a wide smile, perfectly white, slightly crooked, entirely confident. You're jealous. Men, as always, are given more room to be imperfect. A gap in a man's teeth can be called charming. In a woman, it's unfortunate. You lean toward your friend and whisper something witty. She laughs, openly, showing surprisingly straight teeth. You blink. Maybe she had them filed. It's a thing. Painful, expensive, but possible. You mentally add it to your wish list, right between velvet slippers that don't pinch and a fiancé with tolerable breath. As the evening winds down, you press a sugar-coated almond to your tongue. The sweetness coats your mouth, blurring the sharpness of the clove. You know it's bad for your teeth, but you also know that sugar is a luxury, a sign of privilege. And tonight, you'll indulge. You catch your reflection in a silver goblet. Lips, softly painted. Teeth, mostly hidden. Smile, mysterious enough to pass inspection. And that's enough. You inhale and hold your breath. Your maid tightens the final laces of your bodice, pulling the linen corset into place with a firm tug that feels more like a hug from a bear. Your ribs compress, your waist narrows, and your chest, ah yes, your chest rises into the perfect Renaissance silhouette. In this era, the ideal bust is full, round, and high, but not wobbly, not soft. Breasts must be sculpted like marble, seen, admired, and slightly feared. You adjust the neckline of your gown, which dips just low enough to suggest, but not reveal. Modesty, after all, is part of the tease. You shift slightly, testing the range of motion. Not much. The corset doesn't just support, it reshapes. And beneath that structured linen is another layer, a chemise, thin as paper, sometimes stuffed with soft cloth or even dried moss to maintain the illusion of lift. Moss! It's nature's underwire. Historians still argue how common these rigid undergarments were. Some believe only the wealthiest women wore true-boned corsets, while others suggest a looser form of breast binding was the norm among merchants' wives and artisans' daughters. What's clear is this: the bust line wasn't just personal, it was political. You look down at yourself. The gown presses your breasts upward into two smooth orbs that hover just above the neckline. Not too high. That would suggest vulgarity, but high enough to signal health, fertility, and wealth. Because if you can afford to not nurse your own children, wet nurses are a luxury, your breasts will remain perfectly untouched. You catch a whiff of lavender-scented starch from your shift and feel a small bloom of pride. Your mother once said that a woman's décolletage was her calling card. You remember thinking that was ridiculous. Now you see what she meant. You reach for your bosom pad, a small, crescent-shaped pillow of cloth, filled with sheep's wool and sewn into the gown's lining. It boosts the shape, creates symmetry, and hides the slight difference in your natural silhouette. Everyone wears one. Even that duchess who pretends she's naturally blessed. You saw her pad slip once during a garden party. It landed in her teacup. And don't forget the bust veil, a diaphanous layer sometimes draped across the neckline, not to obscure, but to entice. Silk so sheer it might as well be fog. It's like saying, here is a secret, but also, please notice it. There's a fine line between modesty and spectacle, and Renaissance women walk it like acrobats. You must be desirable, but chaste, curvy, but contained, feminine, but respectable. And your breasts? They're both proof of youth and tools of negotiation. Marriages have been arranged on less flattering curves. And men, oh men, they write sonnets about your chest, not about your thoughts or your embroidery or your impeccable lute playing. Number, it's always your snowy hills or your soft twin moons. You read one once that compared a noble woman's bust to a soft pillow where dreams lie. You wondered if he'd ever tried sleeping on a corset. You leaned forward just a little, testing the gown's hold. It holds. Good. You've seen what happens when it doesn't. There was that masquerade where a young lady's bodice string snapped and launched a button halfway across the ballroom. A squire nearly lost an eye. You touched the base of your throat, where a pearl necklace rests just above the bust line. Jewelry placement is strategic here. A pendant too low suggests intent. Too high, and you risk looking like a novice nun. The pearl is perfect. Innocent, yet luxurious. One fringe practice that always intrigued you. Some women dust their cleavage with crushed alabaster and powdered silk to enhance the brightness. A few add the faintest hint of blush, like dawn rising between mountains. You tried it once. Your brother asked if you had a rash. Still, the effort continues. You've read beauty manuals that advise daily massage with rose oil to maintain firmness. Others suggest alternating hot compresses and cold cloths, like some medieval spa regimen. One even recommended walking backward in circles under the full moon to attract Venus's favor. You haven't gone that far. Yet. You sit carefully on a velvet cushion, keeping your spine straight, your arms poised, your chest lifted. This isn't comfort, it's presentation. And tonight, your bust must speak before you do. It must say, I am healthy. I am graceful. I am worth an estate in Umbria. You breathe in, as much as the corset allows anyway. And just like that, you are Renaissance ready. A woman, a sculpture, a carefully balanced miracle of physics and lace. I wonder, has any part of this story reminded you of someone you know? You catch a glimpse of yourself in a polished brass tray as you pass through the hallway. Just enough to see the outline of your figure and the curve of your collarbone. But tonight, something else catches your attention. The narrow sleeves, the tailored doublet, the perfectly placed codpiece of the man just ahead of you. Yes, it's time we talk about Renaissance men, and how they too were trapped under the heavy velvet cloak of beauty expectations. The ideal male body in the Renaissance is not about raw brawn. It's about proportion, harmony, that elusive geometry of the soul expressed in flesh. You know the look. Square shoulders, long limbs, narrow waist, broad chest. Like a statue of Apollo who's just come back from fencing practice. And that's the key. Fencing practice. Young noblemen spend hours honing their bodies, not in gyms, but in the fencing yard, the hunting field, the riding arena. You once watched a group of them train in the courtyard, moving like dancers with blades, their silk shirts clinging to sweat-slicked torsos. It was less about combat and more about poise, a kind of deadly grace. You overheard your tutor once mutter, "He moves like a poem." You never found out who he was, but the phrase stuck with you. Historians still argue whether Renaissance body ideals were universally applied or mostly confined to court culture and elite circles. But portraits don't lie, or at least they tell the lies people wanted told. Look at the paintings. Men posed with strong jaws, sculpted calves, and slightly puffed chests, as if mid-speech or about to recite Petrarch. You remember your brother's complaints when he was fitted for his first doublet. The tailor pinched and poked, adjusting the seams to exaggerate his shoulders while cinching the waist. The result? He looked like a noble rooster. He hated it. Everyone else clapped. And then there's the hose, tight-fitting leg coverings that leave absolutely nothing to the imagination. Hose are made of wool or silk, sometimes padded to smooth the lines, and occasionally enhanced. The codpiece, for example, started as a modesty patch and evolved into something closer to a billboard for masculinity. You once attended a feast where a visiting noble's codpiece was so large and embroidered it looked like it had its own title. Someone whispered it had a small pocket for love notes. Someone else whispered it had its own perfume. fringe fact. In Venice, there was once a brief, and thankfully short-lived, trend among young nobles to decorate their codpieces with tiny mirrors, supposedly to dazzle courtesans during dances. You don't know if it worked, but you do know the dog managed to knock over 3 of them at one banquet. Men also indulge in cosmetics, though more subtly. A bit of pomade for the hair, maybe a touch of rouge for the cheeks during colder months. And hair is no small matter. A thick, flowing mane suggests vitality and strength. Baldness, that's something to conceal with velvet caps or strategic shadow in portraits. You've seen men spend more time adjusting their hats than writing letters. The hat angle must be rakish, but deliberate. Feather placement, a science, and diet plays its part. Men eat more heartily in public, but in private, many restrict themselves to maintain their slim forms. Your cousin once caught her betrothed sneaking parsley water and complaining that too much bread made his face puffy. She dumped him. Not for vanity, but for hypocrisy. You watch now as one of the courtiers leans against a marble column, legs crossed just so, the embroidery on his sleeves catching the candlelight. He's practiced that pose. You're sure of it. But it works. And that's the lesson, isn't it? In the Renaissance, everyone is performing beauty. Men and women alike are playing parts, chasing ideals, sculpting their bodies like cathedrals. There is no offstage, only costume changes. You smile, a real one, though you keep your lips closed. And somewhere deep inside, you wonder, if we stripped away the brocade and the powder, the padding and the paint, what would remain? Maybe just a person, a little tired, a little hungry, but still standing tall and trying, always trying, to be beautiful. You sit under the open loggia, golden evening light filtering through the lattice above, and tilt your head just so, positioning your hair to catch the last glow of the sun. Your scalp tingles slightly, which is not unusual. That's just the lie. Or maybe the urine. Hard to tell. Because tonight, you're going for golden hair. Not the dark, ink-slick curls of poets, or the sleek black of courtesans. No, your heart and fashion demands the hair of a Botticelli muse. That delicate, almost transparent flaxen blonde that makes you look like you've stepped out of a myth and directly into a marriage proposal. And to get that, you need chemistry. Dangerous, desperate chemistry. Earlier today, your maid helped you apply a special bleach mixture, a carefully measured blend of lye water, chamomile, lemon juice, and yes, stale urine, preferably male urine, collected at dawn. That part's always a bit awkward. You sat for hours in the sun wearing your salana, a wide-brimmed bonnet with the crown cut out so your hair could spill freely and bleach evenly in the open air. The hat's meant to protect your skin, while your hair drinks in the sunlight like a thirsty vine. You always feel ridiculous in it, like a garden gnome mid-transformation. But beauty waits for no dignity. Now, your hair is drying, crunchy, smelling faintly of lemons and laundry gone wrong. You won't wash it out until tomorrow morning. Your pillow will pay the price tonight, but your reflection, radiant. Historians still argue whether Renaissance women truly believed in the mystical power of blonde hair, or if it was just another Italian affectation popularized by Tuscan painters and Northern European queens. But paintings don't lie. Venus, Judith, St. Catherine, they all glow with that impossible, angelic brightness. You run a comb carefully through your hair. A few strands fall out. Not surprising. Between the bleaching and the elaborate updos, your hair is tired. You once read a beauty manual that recommended rinsing with goat's milk to restore luster. Another suggested crushed walnut hulls, but that only darkens the color. Counterproductive. Still, you persist. Hair isn't just hair here. It's a moral statement, a social asset, and a tool of flirtation. Loose hair? Youthful, sensual, dangerous. Braided hair? Modest, mature, marriage-ready. Covered hair? Virtuous. Revealed hair? Strategic. You think of that girl from the countryside, Annetta, who let her hair flow free during the harvest festival. She was dancing, laughing, radiant. A few weeks later, she was married off in a quiet ceremony. The rumors? That someone spotted her barefoot, with her curls loose in the wind. Apparently, that was enough. Your own hair is now pinned in soft coils at the nape of your neck. You've wrapped silk ribbons through the braid, not just for decoration, but to keep the fragile strands from fraying. You tried gold thread once, but it tangled horribly and had to be cut out with sewing scissors. Lesson learned. Fringe fact. In Venice, there's a brief trend where women dye their hair with saffron, leaving their heads uncovered on their balconies while singing softly to attract potential suitors. One balcony collapsed under the weight of 3 sisters doing just that. They survived. Barely. Their reputations? Not so lucky. And don't forget the men. Oh, they care deeply about hair. Long curling locks are all the rage, styled with wax, scented with rosemary, sometimes even powdered for effect. Your brother once paid 3 florins for a pomade made from bear fat and rose petals. He said it gave his hair volume and gravitas. It also gave him a breakout on his neck. You run your fingers through your drying hair one more time, testing the softness, the sheen. You imagine it catching the firelight at the banquet tonight. You imagine someone seeing you from across the room and thinking, there she is, the golden one. You smile softly. Your scalp still tingles. Maybe from the bleach. Maybe from anticipation. But either way, tonight, you will shine. If you're still awake, thank you. The next part is the part I couldn't forget. You sit in your chamber, elbows balanced on the edge of your vanity, slowly pulling on a pair of delicate gloves, soaked in rosewater and milk. The fabric clings to your fingers like second skin, cool, damp, and faintly sweet-smelling. You'll leave them on for at least an hour, maybe 2, because tonight, your hands need to be perfect. In the Renaissance, the beauty standard for hands isn't just about cleanliness. It's about poetry. Hands are judged like art, delicate, pale, slender, with long tapering fingers and an absence of veins. Anything resembling a working hand is frowned upon. Blisters, a scandal, calluses, social death, dirt beneath the nails. You might as well take vows and flee to a convent. You glance down at your own fingers. No rings today, just the faint stain of crushed almonds from yesterday's paste. Your maid insists you apply it nightly. She makes it herself, grinding the nuts with honey and a little egg yolk to make a salve that's meant to soften the skin and fade freckles. Historians still argue about how realistic these beauty standards were. Surely most women's hands didn't live up to the paintings. And yet across Europe, from Milan to Bruges, we see the same motif again and again. Women's hands rendered impossibly smooth, almost boneless, as if their fingers had never touched anything coarser than a feather pillow. You remember your cousin's wedding. She refused to carry her bouquet, worried the thorns might scratch her palm. Her sister held it for her, even during the vows. Later, they joked she'd probably start wearing gloves to bed. But you've done that, haven't you? Tonight, you'll do it again. You pick up your little hand mirror, turning it to study your knuckles. Still too red. You dab a bit of white lead. Yes, even on your hands, to even out the tone. Then with the tip of a feather, you apply a whisper of blue vein paint just below the wrist. It's a trick you learned from a courtier who swears it makes her veins look more refined. You didn't believe her until you saw it yourself. She looked like a statue come to life. Fringe tip. In Florence, some ladies press their hands into snow, if they can get it carted down from the mountains. In Rome, they rinse them with chilled rose water or soak them in wine-steeped bread to keep the skin pale. One lady even used powdered lily bulbs, but that made her fingers too slippery to hold a fork. And fingernails? Clean, short, and gently buffed. No color, no flair. The goal is purity. If they shine, it must be from oiling them with almond or olive oil, not polish. You remember seeing a visiting duchess with stained nails, dark red, like dried cherries. The room fell quiet. Someone whispered she was experimenting. You're not sure if they meant with style or sorcery. You begin flexing your fingers, one at a time, a slow and graceful stretch. You've practiced this in secret. How to gesture just so. How to pour wine without revealing too much palm. How to fan yourself while letting your fingers flutter like butterfly wings. It's all in the hands. Eyes are important, yes, but hands? Hands tell stories, and men watch them. You know this. You've seen the way their eyes linger when you reach for a goblet or press your hand to your chest. There's poetry in your movements. If you do it right, they won't even notice your gown, just the way you hold it. You pull off the gloves now, slowly, carefully. Your hands glisten faintly. You rub in the remaining rose water with slow, circular strokes. Then you pick up your fan, ivory, imported, absurdly expensive, and practice opening it with a single flick. The snap echoes softly in the chamber. You smile. You don't have a fortune. You don't have a title. But tonight, your hands are perfect. And sometimes, in the right candlelight, that's enough. You shift your weight onto one leg, trying to take pressure off your toes. But the pain just shifts somewhere new. Your heel, your arch, maybe your sole. You can't be sure. Because tonight, you've squeezed yourself into a pair of embroidered velvet slippers that are undeniably beautiful, but also undeniably 2 sizes too small. Welcome to Renaissance footwear, where function gasps quietly in the corner, while fashion parades across the floor in pointed shoes and cramping feet. You glance down at them now. They really are exquisite. The uppers are embroidered with golden thread and tiny seed pearls. The soles so thin you can feel the texture of every tile beneath you. No right or left shoe, just 2 mirrored blades of discomfort. One has already started pinching your pinky toe. You've named that toe regret. In this era, dainty feet are an obsession. The ideal Renaissance woman doesn't just have small feet. She floats. She glides like a breeze through a frescoed corridor, silent and graceful. The truth? She's usually hobbling. Historians still argue how far these foot ideals extended beyond the nobility. But in court circles, the message is clear. The smaller the foot, the more marriageable the girl. A high arch suggests refinement. Short toes, modesty, large feet, a working-class fate. No one says it out loud, of course, but you've heard the whispers. Your cousin once tried to bind her feet tighter using cloth strips, wrapping them from heel to toe every morning before slipping into her shoes. It worked for a while. Then came the blisters, then the limp. She still walks funny when it rains. You once considered doing the same. You even tried soaking your feet in vinegar to shrink the bones. That didn't work, but your skin peeled for a week. And let's talk about the slippers themselves. They're often backless, like mules, and sometimes so fragile they can't handle cobbled streets. That's fine. You're not meant to walk outside in them anyway. Just from chamber to salon, maybe to the garden if it's freshly swept. For outdoors, there are pattens, wooden overshoes with raised soles meant to protect delicate slippers from mud. They make you clomp like a duck and ruin any pretense of elegance, but they save your shoes from ruin and your feet from the wrath of Florence's drainage system. Today, your slippers are new, stiff, and treacherous. You stuff the toes with silk to help stretch them, but it's no use. The left heel already threatens a blister. Still, you keep walking, slowly, gracefully, like someone auditioning for a painting. Fringe fact: in some Venetian circles, the height of your patent soles signaled status. Some noblewomen wore platforms over 20 inches high, tottering through the palazzo like baby giraffes, holding onto servants or long sticks for balance. They looked ridiculous. They also looked expensive. You remind yourself that beauty often hurts. Your feet are no exception. You step forward into the dining hall, keeping your pace controlled. The floor is slick marble, and your shoes offer no grip. You've seen it happen before. A girl stepping too confidently and sliding into a tapestry. No one helps her. Everyone remembers it. At the banquet table, you sit, finally, and feel the glorious relief of removing your shoes under the tablecloth. One slipper clinks softly against a goblet stem. You freeze. No one notices. You exhale. You curl your toes in secret. They tingle with freedom. You'll pay for this tomorrow. Maybe a limp, maybe a bruise. But tonight, the shoes made the right first impression. You glance around the room. Men wear boots or soft leather shoes, usually adorned with a flash of ribbon or a decorative buckle. They complain when their heels get scuffed. You'd like to see one of them wear brocade mules across wet stone. Your friend across the table raises an eyebrow in shared understanding. She's wearing the same slippers in burgundy. You both know you'll spend the evening smiling through the pain, standing with one foot subtly tucked behind the other, trying to hide the fact that your feet feel like crushed grapes. But no one will know, because tonight you look divine. And divine women, they don't limp. You dab a drop of jasmine oil behind your ear, then another on your wrist, rubbing gently in circular motions. The scent unfurls like a secret, sweet, floral, slightly bitter at the edges. It's not just for pleasure, it's a declaration. Because in the Renaissance, you are what you smell like. The air in your room is already thick with layers of scent. The rose petal gloves from earlier, the lemony trace of hair bleach, a faint trail of violet powder on your shift. You pause, deciding whether to add a dab of ambergris at the nape of your neck. It's bold, maybe too bold for tonight's gathering, but you're tired of being subtle. People don't really bathe, not regularly. Bathing is complicated, expensive, sometimes frowned upon for health reasons, and in some places, even morally suspicious. Water opens the pores, they say, and lets in sickness. The better solution? Scent cover. Your favorite blend is made by an apothecary near the Arno. Crushed pearls, clove oil, and vinegar of roses. It smells like wealth and melancholy, like the diary of someone who's never worked a day in her life, but dreams in perfect cursive. You touch your temple with a bit of orris root powder, a favorite among noblewomen. It smells faintly of violets and keeps your skin dry. A good thing. since you've been sweating under that corset all day. But no one must ever know. And that's the paradox of Renaissance beauty. You must never appear to be trying. Even as you spend hours concocting fragrance blends that include whale vomit and powdered unicorn horn. Okay, narwhal tusk, but it's branded better. You must smell like you woke up this way. Ethereal, pious, maybe a little tragic. Historians still debate whether scent was primarily practical or performative. Surely some perfumes masked sweat, but others clearly served social or even spiritual functions. The church tolerated scents in moderation, but too much fragrance could suggest moral decay. A perfumed woman was a woman who cared too much. Suspicious. You once heard a friar preach that scent should lift the soul, not arouse the flesh. Then he sniffed his own sleeve, which smelled suspiciously of bergamot. In your world, smelling good is a survival skill. It's how you gain entry to a salon, how you signal health, how you communicate things you'd never dare say out loud. A citrus note? Youthful. Patchouli? Mysterious. Too much musk? Courtesan. Not enough scent? Ignored. And scent memory is powerful. You remember your aunt's old dressing room. Walls lined with little glass bottles, a constant hum of rose, lavender, cinnamon. Even now, one whiff of sage oil, and you're 10 years old again, stealing sugar plums and hiding beneath her skirts. You sniff your wrist again. The jasmine is holding steady. It'll mingle with your skin's heat, grow richer through the evening. Someone might notice. Someone might not. One fringe fashion you haven't dared try yet? Scented jewelry. Rings that open to release a puff of perfume. Lockets that hold cloth soaked in clove water. Even fans dipped in tinctures, so every flutter whispers scent. You saw one worn by a Venetian countess. She waved it twice, and the whole room turned their heads. Not just because of the smell, but because of the confidence. You pull on your gloves, the rosewater ones from earlier, and admire the way your perfume now clings to every motion. You're ready. Outside, the night begins to cool. The wind carries hints of other lives. Baking bread, distant horses, the metallic sting of river air. But you carry jasmine and ambergris. You are a cloud of artifice, carefully composed. You don't just enter a room. You arrive, with scent leading the way. And when you leave, people will remember it long after they forget what you were wearing. You lean toward the mirror, candlelight flickering against your cheek, and press a tiny black dot just beneath your left eye. It's deliberate, not a blemish. A beauty mark. A message. Because in the Renaissance, a well-placed mole could speak louder than words. You dip your brush back into the small pot of burnt cork mixed with fig sap, careful not to let it smudge. The dot must be neat, round, and slightly mysterious. Too big, and it looks clownish. Too faint, and no one will notice it, which defeats the whole purpose. This mark means flirtation, or melancholy, or possibly both. It depends on who's interpreting. Historians still debate the origin of this fad. Some say it grew out of necessity, an attempt to cover smallpox scars or blemishes caused by lead-based cosmetics. Others argue it's just another case of courtly code-making, where women turn their faces into maps of suggestion. One mark near the eye? Longing. Near the lips? Promise. On the chin? Maybe. Your friend wears hers at the corner of her mouth. She swears it gets her more compliments than her pearl necklace. A cousin of yours, scandalous by reputation, once showed up at a masquerade with 2 beauty marks, one on each cheek. People whispered all night. You consider adding another near your collarbone, but stop. Restraint, after all, is part of the game. Still, these marks aren't the only tools of subtle seduction. You reach for your veil, a fine mesh of black lace, light as a spiderweb, designed not to obscure, but to tease. It covers just enough of your face to suggest mystery, to make people lean closer, to make them wonder what they're not seeing. Veils aren't just for mourning or weddings. In this world, they're used like punctuation. A heavy veil says untouchable. A light one? Approach, if you dare. You secure it with tiny pins at your temples, careful not to snag your hair. Men love veils. They pretend they don't, but they do. Something about the illusion, the game of hiding and revealing. You once saw a duke try to peek beneath a noblewoman's veil with his fan, as if fanning away fog. She slapped him with her glove, then married him 2 months later. Fringe fact: in some courts, especially in France, women used actual fabric stencils to apply beauty marks with perfect consistency. Others cut them from velvet or silk, creating miniature mouche, little artificial moles, often shaped like stars, moons, even hearts. One particularly bold lady wore a tiny black arrow. She said it pointed toward her best feature. No one could agree on what that was. You smooth your veil and tilt your head just slightly. The beauty mark catches the candlelight, a speck of darkness amid your powdered cheek. It draws the eye. It makes them look again. And this is the point. In a world where speech is measured and glances are fleeting, your face becomes your language. A veil, a mark, a glance through lace. These are your sentences. There's a knock at the door. Your maid peeks in. They're waiting, she whispers. You nod and rise slowly, adjusting the fall of your veil and tucking your perfume sachet into your sleeve. As you move, your mark stays perfectly in place, a small, silent beacon amid the grandeur. You descend the stairs and enter the candlelit hall, where conversation ebbs and flows like a tide of Latin-tinged gossip. You say little. You don't have to, because tonight you speak in signals, and everyone is watching. If you're listening closely, you might feel what they felt, just a little. You sit in the stillness of your chamber, back pressed against the carved walnut headboard, gown loosened just enough to breathe. A basin of warm water rests on the table beside you, the faint scent of lemon and mint rising from it like a question you'd rather not answer. Because tonight's ritual isn't about beauty in the way others are. Tonight, it's about purity. In the Renaissance, beauty isn't just skin deep, it's soul deep, blood deep, womb deep. And the most prized beauty of all? Virginity. Or at least the appearance of it. Because let's be honest, nobody's checking your soul under a microscope. They're checking for signs, for glow, for innocence carefully preserved or skillfully simulated. You dip a linen cloth into the lemon-infused water and begin the delicate process. Lemon juice is said to tighten the skin, to cleanse and refresh places you're never supposed to talk about. You've heard older women whisper about more extreme methods: vinegar douches, wool soaked in wine, even herbal infusions that promise to restore modesty. You never ask what that means. One fringe tale you heard, probably apocryphal, involved a nun-turned-courtesan who faked her virginity with a sponge soaked in sheep's blood. It worked too, until someone found the sponge. Scandal doesn't begin to cover it. You smooth the cloth over your inner thigh and sigh. The sting means it's working, they say. Of course they do. Historians still argue whether these purity rituals were private or widely enforced, whether women truly believed them or simply knew how to play the part. But the pressure is real. You've felt it since you were 12, since an old nurse told you not to sit on cold stones, lest your virtue leak out through your spine. And it's not just bodily. There's a whole look to virginity. Your skin must glow, not with oil, but with a soft, powdery clarity. Your lips must be pink and unmarked. Your breath light. Your eyes cast downward at all the right moments. You must know nothing, and somehow everything. Enough to avoid trouble, but not enough to imply experience. So you keep your cheeks rouged just so, your hair in modest coils, your speech carefully edited. And tonight, before bed, you'll sleep with a sachet of dried violets beneath your pillow. They're said to promote dreams of innocence. Whether or not that's true, the scent is calming. You glance in the mirror and practice your untouched expression. It's harder than it sounds. You need to look serene but curious, alert but not aggressive, entirely without hunger or desire. It's exhausting. Your cousin, bolder than you, once said, "Virginity is just a costume. You wear it until someone pays enough to take it off." She was married by 16. Her husband wrote sonnets about her untamed modesty. You saw her wink during one recital. You reach for your pearl necklace. It's small, soft lustered, and worn high at the throat. Pearls symbolize purity, of course. But everyone knows they're also a signal that someone's watching. You never wear pearls alone. Another fringe tip you heard from a midwife's apprentice: chew parsley before a social gathering. It keeps your breath sweet and your stomach calm. Also rumored to suppress the signs of lust. You're not entirely sure what that means, but you chew it anyway. You slide beneath your coverlet, the linen cool against your bare legs. The basin steams softly nearby, lemon and mint mingling in the air. Outside, the night is full of summer sounds. Distant laughter, the crack of a carriage wheel, the high whistle of cicadas in the vines. But in here, in this quiet room, scented with caution and ritual, you feel yourself settling. Not into comfort, but into compliance. Because in the Renaissance, beauty isn't just how you look. It's how well you hide everything else. You're sitting for a portrait now. Elbows carefully placed on the brocade armrests, chin tilted, fingers arranged like petals. Across from you, the painter hums under his breath as he mixes pigments. He hasn't said much, just gestured for you to keep your shoulders square and your expression soft. A noble woman should look gentle, he says, dreamy. Not like someone who spent the last hour tightening her corset so tight she can feel her heartbeat in her earlobes. This portrait is important. It will hang in your family's gallery, maybe be sent to prospective husbands, maybe even survive you by a few hundred years. And the image it captures won't just be of your face, but of a fantasy. Because Renaissance beauty in art is never quite the same as beauty in real life. You've seen this before. How the painter smooths away imperfections, lightens skin, widens eyes, narrows jaws. How every woman becomes a variation of the same ideal. Pale, serene, impossibly symmetrical, even if she had freckles, or a crooked smile, or a slightly larger nose, like yours. You watched him work on your cousin's portrait last summer. Her birthmark? Gone. Her chin softened. Her bust? Enhanced. Her hair painted with the soft waves of Botticelli's Venus, though in real life, she couldn't get a curl to hold for more than an hour. Historians still debate whether these artistic enhancements were always at the sitter's request, or simply the painter's default settings. Either way, the result is clear. Renaissance portraits are less about documentation and more about aspiration. You shift slightly. Your gown rustles. The painter sighs. No movement, he murmurs, dabbing ochre onto his palette. You exhale and try to still your body, even as your thoughts churn. Will he paint your eyes as green or brown? Will he elongate your neck? Will he erase the mole on your left cheek, the one you placed there yourself? In portraits, hands are always perfect. Cheeks are always luminous. No one ever looks tired, or bloated, or anxious. No one has sweat stains, or chipped nails, or slightly yellow teeth. Portraits are polite lies, hung in gold frames. You glance around the studio. Other paintings lean against the wall. Half-finished ladies, frozen in alabaster grace. One looks oddly familiar. You realize she was your neighbor's daughter. In real life, her nose turned up like a spoon. Here, it's delicately Grecian. And yet, you can't help but hope your painting flatters you too. You're tired of trying to meet impossible standards in the mirror. Maybe you'll find peace in pigment. The painter clears his throat. Let's do the hair again, he says. More softness. He means less real. Fringe fact. Some Renaissance painters kept notebooks of ideal features they could mix and match, like a Renaissance Photoshop library. One popular artist supposedly had a folder of best noses, clipped from sketches of various sitters. If yours didn't fit the mold, he simply swapped it out. You wonder what will be remembered of you. The flush of your cheeks, the gleam of your eyes, or just the paint version, silent, perfect, untouched. You try to hold your expression, not blank, not smiling, something in between, something noble. Your foot has gone numb. Your back aches. The corset digs like a question you don't want to answer. And still, you sit. Because someday, this painting might hang in a great hall. Someone will pass by, glance up, and pause. They'll see your face, your hair, your hands arranged like lilies. And they'll think, how beautiful she was. They won't know the itch on your nose, or the way your stomach growled midway through sitting, or that your real beauty mark was on the other cheek. No, those parts of you don't survive the canvas. Only the myth does. You sit at the edge of the courtyard fountain, veiled in shadow, sipping a cup of watered wine and pretending not to eavesdrop. But you are listening. Of course you're listening. Because just beyond the hedge, a group of men, artists, scholars, minor nobles, are deep in conversation. And you know the topic without hearing the words. They're discussing women. Specifically, what makes a woman beautiful. It's a favorite pastime, like hunting or arguing about Aristotle. You hear one of them declare, "It's the nose that defines a face. A strong nose shows intelligence." Another counters, "No, it's the ankles. Delicate ankles reveal delicate temperament." A third chimes in, "It's her voice. If it's too loud, she might as well be a goat." You roll your eyes, quietly. In the Renaissance, beauty isn't just performed. It's judged, catalogued, and debated, often by men, loudly, publicly, as if women were tapestries to be appraised and auctioned. Historians still argue whether these kinds of salons were satirical or serious. Some say they were clever parlor games, ways to pass time with a wink and a jest. Others argue they were genuine exercises in control, ways to establish and enforce an ideal that no real woman could achieve. Either way, you've heard this all before. You remember your tutor reading aloud from Castiglione's Book of the Courtier. in which male courtiers discuss what makes a lady truly graceful. Spoiler: it includes never speaking out of turn, always smiling gently, and walking like a modest breeze. You wondered aloud what a breeze was doing walking. Your tutor did not laugh. You sip again. One of the men mentions a duchess's elbows. Elbows. Apparently, hers were too pointy. Another recalls a certain contessa's neck being just the right length. A poet sighs about the soft roundness of Lady Bianca's temples. You hope she never hears that. You can't decide if it's absurd or offensive. Probably both. You once tried to join a conversation like this, offered a witty observation about chin dimples, and were met with polite silence. Then the conversation resumed without you. Your opinion wasn't the kind they were collecting. One fringe tale that makes you laugh every time. In Milan, a physician tried to create a scientific chart ranking female beauty features by category: eyes, hands, gait, shin nobility. Yes, shin nobility. He ended up publishing a pamphlet. No one took it seriously, except for your uncle, who tried to use it to choose a wife. But the truth is, these beauty debates aren't just harmless fluff. They shape you. They echo through your dressing room, your family's expectations, even your own thoughts. You find yourself mentally scoring your friends. Good eyes, weak chin, lovely wrists. You hate that you do it, but you do. And it's not just other women. You overheard your brother once rating a girl's laugh. Too brassy, he said, as if sound had weight and shape and market value. You watch the men now. Their gestures are casual, wine cups tilting, hands slicing the air as they weigh features like commodities. You wonder if they'd recognize you if you stood up, unmasked. Would you pass? Would you need defending? Would you be praised for your cheekbones, but docked points for your indecisive shoulders? You smirk into your cup. Your shoulders are just fine, but the sting lingers. And that's the cruel trick of Renaissance beauty. It invites you to compete, but not to speak. You are the subject of the sonnet, not the poet. The painting, not the painter. The game plays without your input. You rise, slowly, quietly. You're not angry, just tired. Tired of pretending the rules don't apply while trying to win anyway. The courtyard glows silver in the moonlight. You walk away from the voices, from the ratings, from the invisible scorecard that's followed you since girlhood. Tonight, you'll wash your face with mint water, brush out your hair, sleep like someone who doesn't need to be chosen to matter. Because beauty judged by others is exhausting. And for once, you'd like to be enough just sitting still. You lie awake in bed, moonlight washing across the ceiling in quiet ribbons, the weight of your veil and corset finally gone. Your hair is loose now, your feet bare, your body sore, in all the places that don't get mentioned in poetry. You should be asleep, but something keeps your eyes open. Maybe it's the ache in your ankles from the shoes. Maybe it's the scent of rose water still clinging to your pillow. Or maybe it's the realization you can't shake. Not tonight. Because the truth is, beauty in the Renaissance isn't just about being lovely. It's about surviving. You think of the girl from your old convent school, the one who wasn't pretty. Not by the court standards anyway. She had wide hips and a nose too bold for sonnets, but she could sing. Her voice made people cry. And yet, when marriage came up, everyone sighed and said, if only she looked the part. She's in a nunnery now, not by choice. In this world, your face can buy you safety. Your hands can signal status. Your scent can mean the difference between inclusion and invisibility. Beauty is a currency, and those without it often pay the highest price. Historians still debate whether women had any real power in this arena. Weren't they just pawns in a larger patriarchal game? But others argue differently, that beauty, for all its limitations, was a kind of silent weapon, a language women learned to wield when other tools were denied them. You've seen it yourself, how your mother used silence like a blade, how your aunt employed a glance like a signature. You've seen a well-dressed girl with nothing but bone structure negotiate a better dowry than your cousin with land. You run your fingers along the curve of your cheek, still smooth for now. You're young, but you've already learned the rhythm. Powder, pinch, pluck, pose. And under it all, the quiet mantra that pulses with every mirror glance. Be what they want, or be forgotten. Fringe fact? In some courts, women were trained from childhood, not just in music or Latin, but in posture, grace, expression. They were taught how to appear, how to breathe beauty, not live it, just breathe it. You think of the countless little performances, fainting with grace, laughing just enough, crying without smudging your lead paint. It's all exhausting, and yet you do it because the alternative is fading. And in the Renaissance, fading is dangerous. You pull your blanket higher, cool linen brushing your chin. Outside, an owl hoots. A dog barks in the distance. Somewhere, someone else is brushing out their hair, soaking their hands, plucking away another piece of themselves for tomorrow's face. You close your eyes, and for a moment, you let yourself be soft, not shaped, not posed, just soft, just human. Because even in this gilded world, behind all the pearl powder and poetry, there's a girl trying to keep her place. And tonight, that's enough. The room softens around you now. The air is still. Your breathing slows. The candles have long since gone out, and the scent of jasmine, faint and fading, lingers in the fabric of your pillow. You're not being watched anymore. There are no glances to measure, no fans to flutter, no corsets to pull tighter, no mirrors. Just the rhythm of your own breath and the quiet hum of the world beyond your walls. The echo of your steps, so careful, so practiced, fades into memory. You are no longer posing for a painter or trying to catch the attention of a room. You are weightless now, unjudged, undone. Outside, the night hums softly. Crickets in the ivy, the occasional creak of wooden beams cooling in the dark. And inside, you melt into the mattress, the threadbare linen smooth against your cheek. The beauty you carried today, pressed, powdered, pinned, is all packed away. And what remains is still beautiful, still you. So drift now. No need to hold your chin a certain way. No need to hide the curve of your shoulder. You are safe. You are enough. And you made it through another day. Sleep well, sweet dreamer. You've survived the Renaissance. History doesn't just teach us about the past. It teaches us how to feel more deeply today.